The stainless steel lunchbox crashed across the school courtyard just as dozens of children stopped to watch. Rice and vegetables scattered across the pavement. Before the frightened boy could kneel to pick them up, a tall man in a black suit grabbed him by the arm. "You can't even carry a lunchbox," he growled. 10-year-old Daniel Park lowered his head, too terrified to answer. The man's hand slowly rose. Every teacher froze. Parents hurried their children away. Nobody dared interfere. Everyone knew who the man was. Kang Min-ho, one of Seoul's most feared mafia bosses. The slap never landed. A firm hand caught his wrist in midair. "If you hit your son again," a calm female voice said, "I promise I'll make sure you pay for it." Silence swallowed the courtyard. Min-ho slowly turned. Standing between him and the boy was a woman wearing a blue janitor's uniform, one hand gripping a mop, the other still holding his wrist. Her name tag read, Amina Okoro. She looked him straight in the eyes. No fear. No hesitation. Only determination. The bodyguards rushed forward. "Madam, step away. Do you know who you're talking to?" Amina never looked at them. She spoke only to Min-ho. "I don't care whether you're rich or powerful." She pointed toward Daniel. "He's still a child." Min-ho's dark eyes narrowed. "No one has ever touched me without permission." Amina finally released his wrist. "Then remember today." Daniel stood frozen, unable to believe what had just happened. His father had terrified grown men for years. Yet this stranger had stopped him with nothing but courage. One bodyguard whispered nervously, "Boss, give the order." Min-ho ignored him. Instead, he looked at Daniel. "Get in the car." Daniel quickly obeyed. Before climbing into the black SUV, he looked back at Amina. Their eyes met for a brief second. She smiled gently. "It's okay." For the first time in months, Daniel believed someone meant those words. As the convoy disappeared through the school gates, the teachers rushed toward Amina. "Have you lost your mind? That man could destroy your life. You should apologize immediately." Amina calmly picked up her mop. "I've seen children afraid of their parents before." One teacher sighed. "You don't understand who he is." Amina's expression softened. "No. You don't understand who I am." She quietly returned to cleaning the hallway. But inside, memories she had buried years ago refused to stay hidden. When she was 13 in Nigeria, she had watched her neighbor beat his little daughter almost every evening. People heard. People knew. Nobody intervened. One rainy night, the girl disappeared. The next morning, everyone whispered the same sentence. If only someone had spoken. That day Amina made herself a promise. Never look away again. No matter the cost. If you've ever believed one courageous person can change someone's life, subscribe now and tell us in the comments what you would have done in Amina's place. Across the city, inside the heavily guarded Kang estate, Daniel quietly carried his school bag upstairs. He moved carefully. Silently. Like someone trying not to be noticed. Min-ho watched from the living room. His longtime advisor, Mr. Han, stood nearby. "You frightened him." Min-ho didn't respond. "You raised your hand before thinking." "He embarrassed me." "He's 10. Min-ho finally looked at the older man. "I was tougher than him at 10. Mr. Han answered quietly. "You also lost your childhood at 10. Those words lingered in the room long after the conversation ended. That evening, Daniel sat alone in his bedroom drawing pictures. Every page looked the same. A small boy, standing alone, far away from a tall man. There were never smiles. There were never conversations. Only distance. A housekeeper knocked gently. "Young master, dinner is ready." "I'm not hungry." "You need to eat." Daniel shook his head. "I'll eat later." When she left, he carefully opened his school bag. Inside was the crushed lunchbox. He picked up one grain of rice that had remained inside. Then he quietly began crying. Across the mansion, Min-ho entered his late wife's room. Nothing had been touched in 4 years. Her books remained on the shelves. Her perfume still rested on the dressing table. Her favorite photograph stood beside the window. He stared at it. His wife had been laughing when the picture was taken. 3 days later, she died in what police called a traffic accident. Min-ho knew better. Someone had cut the brakes. His enemies hadn't only killed his wife. They had buried the kind man he used to be. Every year afterward, anger replaced grief. Every mistake Daniel made reminded him of everything he had already lost. He didn't know how to be gentle anymore. Only strong. Only feared. The following morning, Min-ho arrived at his headquarters. One of his men hurried toward him. "Boss." "What?" "We found the woman." Min-ho stopped walking. "The janitor?" "Yes. We know where she lives." Another lieutenant stepped forward. "Just give the order." "What order?" "We'll teach her never to interfere again." The room became silent. Everyone waited. Min-ho slowly removed his gloves. Then he looked directly at his men. "If any of you touches that woman." His voice became colder than ice. "You'll answer to me." The lieutenants exchanged confused glances. Nobody understood. Neither did Min-ho. For reasons he couldn't explain. He kept hearing her voice. "He's still a child." That afternoon, as Amina finished cleaning the school library, the principal hurried toward her. "You have visitors." Outside the administration building stood 3 black luxury vehicles. Every student watched from the windows. Mr. Han stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Miss Amina Okoro?" "Yes. Chairman Kang would like to speak with you." Teachers gasped. The principal turned pale. Amina remained calm. "Is that an invitation?" She looked at the long line of bodyguards. "Or a warning?" Mr. Han smiled faintly. "I suppose that depends on what happens after you meet him." Without another word, Amina climbed into the waiting vehicle. As the convoy pulled away from the school, she looked out of the window, not knowing whether she was driving toward the end of her job, or the beginning of a life she could never have imagined. The black SUV rolled through towering iron gates before stopping in front of a sprawling estate that looked more like a fortress than a home. Amina stepped out without waiting for anyone to open the door. Mr. Han watched her carefully. Most people shake before meeting Chairman Kang. Amina smiled faintly. "I've already met him." She followed him inside. The mansion was silent. Marble floors reflected the afternoon sunlight, but there was no warmth anywhere. Mr. Han stopped outside a pair of large wooden doors. "The chairman is waiting." Amina nodded and walked in alone. Min-ho stood beside a floor-to-ceiling window with his back to her. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Finally, he turned. "You surprised me." "So I've been told. I've spent 20 years building a reputation. And one little boy was still more frightened of you than every criminal in this city." His jaw tightened. "You speak boldly. I speak honestly." Instead of becoming angry, Min-ho slowly sat down. "You aren't afraid I'll hurt you?" Amina answered without hesitation. "If you wanted to hurt me, I wouldn't be standing here." The unexpected reply made him pause. He gestured toward the chair opposite him. "Sit." She remained standing. "I'll stand." He almost smiled. "You don't trust me. You haven't given me a reason to." Silence settled between them again. Then Min-ho asked quietly, "Why did you interfere?" Amina looked directly at him. "When I was 13, a little girl in my neighborhood was beaten almost every day." His expression remained unreadable. People heard her crying. People saw the bruises. But everyone said it wasn't their business. She swallowed hard. One morning she disappeared. Min-ho lowered his eyes. They found her 3 days later. The room became painfully quiet. I promised myself that if I ever saw another child begging for protection with their eyes. She took a slow breath. I would never walk away again. For the first time in years, Min-ho couldn't think of a reply. Just then, a hesitant knock came from the door. Mr. Han entered. Chairman, young Master Daniel is home. Send him in. Daniel walked inside carrying his backpack. The moment he saw Amina, his frightened face brightened. You. She smiled warmly. Hello again. Daniel looked at his father uncertainly. Am I in trouble? Min-ho stared at his son. He noticed something he had never paid attention to before. Daniel wasn't looking at him with respect. He was looking at him with fear. That realization hurt far more than he expected. No, Min-ho finally answered. You're not in trouble. Daniel looked surprised. It was the first gentle sentence his father had spoken to him in months. Amina noticed the change but said nothing. Sometimes healing began with only a few words. Mr. Han cleared his throat. Chairman, the afternoon meeting with the Eastern Alliance begins in 30 minutes. Min-ho nodded. Before leaving, he looked at Amina. I want you to stay. She frowned. For what reason? I'd like you to have dinner with us. She almost laughed. You hardly know me. I know enough. She hesitated before agreeing. That evening felt strangely unfamiliar. Daniel sat quietly across from his father. Amina sat beside the elderly housekeeper. The dining table, usually filled with silence, suddenly felt different. Daniel accidentally knocked over his glass of juice. The glass shattered. His face turned white. I'm sorry. He immediately stood, waiting for the shouting. Waiting for another raised hand. Instead, Min-ho simply looked at the broken glass. It's only a glass. Daniel blinked. What? I said it's only a glass. Nobody at the table moved. The servants exchanged shocked glances. Amina quietly handed Daniel a napkin. Accidents happen. Daniel slowly sat back down. His hands stopped trembling. After dinner, Amina prepared to leave. Min-ho walked her to the front entrance. You changed dinner tonight. No. You did. He looked toward the dining room. My son smiled. Amina answered gently. He was waiting for permission. Permission. To believe his father still loved him. Those words stayed with Min-ho long after her car disappeared through the gates. Over the following weeks, Mr. Han continued inviting Amina to the estate. Sometimes she helped Daniel with homework. Sometimes they played football in the garden. Sometimes they simply talked. Daniel laughed more often. The servants laughed too. Even the bodyguards found themselves smiling whenever the boy ran through the courtyard. One afternoon, Daniel asked a question that stopped everyone. Miss Amina. Yes. If my mom were alive. She knelt beside him. What is it? Do you think she'd be disappointed in Dad? Amina looked toward the window where Min-ho unknowingly stood listening. She answered carefully. I think she'd want both of you to stop hurting. Daniel nodded slowly. I miss her. I know. So does Dad. Daniel looked confused. He never cries. Amina smiled sadly. Some people cry where nobody can see. Behind the doorway, Min-ho quietly wiped away a tear before anyone noticed. If this story has touched your heart so far, subscribe and leave a comment telling us whether you think Min-ho can truly become the father Daniel deserves. That same evening, a black sedan stopped outside the mansion. A scar-faced man stepped out carrying a sealed envelope. Mr. Han immediately became alert. Who sent you? The man bowed. My boss. Who is your boss? Kwon Jae-suk. Min-ho's expression instantly hardened. The name had haunted him for 4 years. Kwon Jae-suk was the ruthless crime lord believed to have ordered the attack that killed Min-ho's wife. Mr. Han handed the envelope to Min-ho. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Min-ho's late wife moments before the fatal crash. Written across the back were chilling words. You couldn't protect her. You won't protect your son either. Min-ho crushed the photograph in his fist. Every painful memory came rushing back. His breathing became heavier. His eyes darkened with rage. Mr. Han stepped closer. Chairman. Min-ho's voice was cold. Prepare every team. Amina, who had just walked into the hallway with Daniel, heard every word. She looked at Min-ho. What are you going to do? I'm ending this. She stepped directly in front of him. And if revenge leaves Daniel without a father? Min-ho froze. The room fell silent. Before he could answer, every security alarm inside the mansion suddenly erupted. Red emergency lights flashed across the walls. One of the guards shouted into his radio. Chairman! What is it? The school bus carrying young Master Daniel has been attacked. For one terrifying second, nobody could breathe. For one terrifying second, nobody moved. Then Min-ho exploded into action. Get every vehicle ready. His bodyguards rushed in every direction. Mr. Han barked orders into his radio. Seal every road leading out of the district. Amina grabbed Min-ho's arm before he reached the door. Think before you move. My son is out there. And that's exactly why you can't let anger make your decisions. Min-ho's breathing was heavy. Every instinct told him to attack. Every painful memory screamed for revenge. Then his phone rang. An unfamiliar number. He answered immediately. If you've touched my son. A cold laugh interrupted him. You still sound the same, Kang Min-ho. Kwon Jae-suk. I've waited years for this conversation. Min-ho's eyes burned with hatred. What do you want? I want you to experience what I experienced. You murdered my wife. No. What? I only gave the order after someone inside your organization sold her location. The words struck Min-ho like a hammer. There was a traitor? There still is. The line went silent for a moment. If you want your son alive, come alone. The call ended. Every man in the room looked at Min-ho. He slowly lowered the phone. There was someone on the inside. Mr. Han looked stunned. That's impossible. Amina wasn't convinced. No organization is too powerful to be betrayed. Just then another bodyguard ran inside carrying a tablet. Chairman. What? We recovered footage from the school. The video showed the school bus leaving the campus. A black truck blocked the road. Masked men jumped out. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel shoved the emergency window open and helped 2 younger children climb out before he escaped himself. Amina smiled through her tears. He remembered what I told him. Min-ho looked at her. You told him what? That courage isn't about being fearless. It's about protecting someone else even when you're afraid. Mr. Han zoomed in on another camera angle. There. Daniel was running toward an abandoned warehouse. So he wasn't taken? No. He was hiding. One of the security officers pointed at another vehicle entering the area. Chairman, our surveillance drone picked up armed men surrounding the warehouse. Min-ho clenched his fists. I'm going. Amina stepped forward. So am I. No. He trusts me. Min-ho couldn't argue with that. Minutes later, their convoy surrounded the abandoned factory. Gunmen stood at every entrance. Mr. Han whispered. There are too many. Min-ho checked his pistol. I only need one opening. Amina looked at him. And then what? I finish this. She shook her head. You rescued Daniel. They're the same thing. No. Her voice was firm. One is driven by love. The other by hatred. Before he could respond, Daniel's frightened voice echoed from inside. Dad. Without hesitation, Min-ho charged forward. Gunfire erupted. His bodyguards returned fire while forcing the attackers backward. Mr. Han led another team through the rear entrance. Inside the warehouse, Daniel was trapped behind broken crates while two armed men closed in. One raised his weapon. Before he could fire, Min-ho tackled him to the ground. The second attacker turned. Amina grabbed a metal pipe and struck his arm, sending the weapon sliding across the concrete floor. Daniel ran straight into his father's arms. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Min-ho held him tighter than ever before. I'm here. Daniel buried his face against his father's chest. I thought you wouldn't come. I will always come. Those words broke something inside Min-ho. He finally understood what his son had needed all these years. Not fear. Not perfection. Presence. Suddenly slow applause echoed through the warehouse. Kwon Jae-suk stepped from the shadows. So touching. Min-ho carefully moved Daniel behind him. This ends today. Kwon laughed. It ended the day you chose revenge over your family. You killed my wife. I destroyed your happiness. He smiled cruelly. You destroyed the rest yourself. Silence filled the warehouse. For the first time, Min-ho realized the man was right. Every slap, every angry word, every lonely dinner, every frightened look from Daniel. None of those had been caused by Kwon. They had been his own choices. Kwon lifted another gun. Before he could aim, police sirens surrounded the building. Floodlights illuminated every entrance. Attorney Seo Ji-eun stepped forward wearing a bulletproof vest. It's over, Kwon. Behind her stood dozens of police officers. Mr. Han smiled. Amina looked at Min-ho. I called her the moment we left the mansion. Min-ho stared at her. You planned this. I promised I would protect Daniel. Kwon tried to escape through the rear exit. Officers tackled him before he reached the door. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. As police led him away, he looked back at Min-ho. You won. Min-ho slowly shook his head. No. Then he looked at Daniel. I almost lost. Several weeks later, the Kang estate felt completely different. Laughter echoed through the gardens. Daniel kicked a football toward his father. Min-ho missed the catch on purpose, making the boy burst into laughter. The servants stopped working just to watch. Mr. Han smiled quietly. I haven't seen this house alive in years. One afternoon, Min-ho called every employee together. From gardeners to cooks, everyone gathered in the courtyard. Amina stood near the back, assuming she had simply been invited to watch. Instead, Min-ho walked directly toward her. He bowed. The entire household gasped. One of the most feared men in Korea had just bowed to a janitor. When you stopped my hand outside that school, he said, I believed you were humiliating me. His voice trembled slightly. Now I know you were saving me. He turned toward everyone. This woman protected my son. He looked back at Amina. And she reminded me how to become his father again. Daniel ran over and hugged Amina tightly. Thank you for keeping your promise. She smiled as tears filled her eyes. I told you someone would always stand up for you. Min-ho gently placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder. I have a promise too. Daniel looked up. What is it? I will never raise my hand against you again. The boy threw his arms around his father. This time, neither of them tried to hide their tears. Months later, the Kang Foundation opened its first child protection center, offering legal aid, counseling, emergency shelter, and education for children living in abusive homes. Above the entrance was a simple plaque. One brave voice can save a lifetime. Every visitor asked about those words. Only 3 people knew the full story. A frightened little boy, a broken father, and a fearless janitor who refused to look away. If this story moved you, subscribe for more powerful stories of hope, redemption, and courage. And tell us in the comments, if you had been standing in that school courtyard, would you have had the courage to stop one of the most feared men in the country? Your answer could inspire someone else to speak up when it matters most.